lost ancient technology.
Magnetic poles.
That's the one thing. I would like to dive into that.
I watched a video on that this morning. The Adam and Eve video.
The Jan Thomas thing.
Jesus Christ.
That's an interesting one. And
is that how much of that is agreed upon? That there could be a time where the magnetic poles actually shift.
So this is science. They say that the last one was like 778,000 years ago, and we're like something like 200,000 years overdue. But the Adam and Eve story, the theory of that is that it happens in cycles of 6,500 years, and that it's a 90-degree flip, but 6 days later, or on the seventh day, it corrects itself.
The planet flips, not just
correct. It's a planet flip 90-degree, and that because of it, the Earth essentially does a standstill. The sun will basically stay in the same spot, causing heating like we've never experienced, and that the wind and the waters continue with their momentum. Because essentially the wind travels at approximately 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So the theory is that when that event happens, it's going to be cataclysmic. And here's the wild thing is that in that document, it says a continental-sized tsunami being 2 miles high. Well, I showed you the Emikusi volcano in Africa, in the Sahara, which is at 11,300 feet, that has salt as well as evidence of gastropods, sea life.
That's 2 miles high.
Yes. And I'm like, it would make a lot of sense. Like if you look at the Bible and involving like Revelations and it's saying like
6 days.
6 days on the seventh day, God rested. In that document, it says 6 days things start simmering down a bit. And by day 7 things are starting over new.
So what's the science behind this complete reversal of the magnetic poles?
So real quick, this is the part that sets me off about this is that any article you ever read on this, it makes it crystal clear that this will not be apocalyptic. Maybe we'll potentially have some satellite communication issues that could affect our power grid and telecommunication systems, and that's going to be unfortunate. But don't worry, it's not a doomsday. I'm like, okay, first of all, if the grid goes down, that is doomsday. But number two, they don't know what they're talking about because they claim that the geomagnetic pole shift is because of the interior, whether it's the iron core or whatever it is, the molten core, does a shift, and because of it, that's why the compass will flip. But I'm like, if you look at the nature of earthquakes, some originate in the crust, others originate in the mantle, in the parts that aren't solid. So I'm like, if you're saying that the interior that is molten does a shift, why on earth would you suggest that it wouldn't cause earthquakes or volcanic activity on the surface? So I feel like every article I ever read on geomagnetic pole shifts, they go out of their way to say, don't worry, it's fine. And I'm like, but yet the evidence shows that it's accelerating. Back in just the 1990s, it was traveling, the North Pole was transitioning at 10 miles a year. Now it's at 40 or almost 40 miles. It's accelerating. And in the Adam and Eve story, it talks about, actually, no, not the Adam and Eve story. There was a documentary on Nova years ago that the evidence shows that when they've studied all the other volcanic rock, for prior known pole shifts, because keep in mind, there's hundreds that are known. This has happened throughout millions and millions of years. This is mainstream science. The poles do flip. But it's not that the Earth flips over. It's that the inside core does, and so your magnetic compass will flip. Like
what causes it?
So whatever that molten core is, it does a shift inside. It allegedly happens in cycles. And we're long overdue. And when it happens, the other theory is that the Earth's shields will be diminished.
Well, definitely. So we know two things right now: is that the pole is moving, so it's off. I think it's off even the South Pole might be off of Antarctica at this point, like the magnetic south. And then the magnetic field, consequently to this movement, is weakening. So we know our magnetic field, and that's where a lot of that danger is going to come from, is if the magnetic field keeps weakening. Now, everything cosmically that happens is going to hit the Earth, and particularly us with our electronics, it's all going to get more easily smashed, because the magnetic field is what protects us from solar flares and cosmic radiation and all this stuff. So as the field and the acceleration of that weakening of the field, is accelerating. So it's getting weaker faster. So we seem to be heading towards a unknown or undetermined time where the poles may shift, like the polarity of the Earth will shift, and the compasses.
And are there any estimates on when this could possibly take place?
according to every article I ever read, like, oh, don't worry, it's probably be another 1,000 years. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's accelerating. And if you look, you don't have to Google this, Jamie. I don't know there's a mountain chain in Eastern Oregon where it's the most evidence of a pole shift, that there was a volcano that was active during the shift. And if you take a compass along the volcanic rock, the compass will slowly start to change. And so wherever like pottery or volcanic rock solidifies, that wherever the North Pole is at that time, it's an imprint, and the compass will continue to show that. It's really fun. Take a compass around volcanic rock, and it'll move the compass to wherever the North Pole was then. But here's the interesting part, is that what it shows is that the pole shifts start slow, and then they accelerate to the point where the day that it happens, you could potentially see the compass slowly moving. And then when you go back to this Adam and Eve story talking about the pole shift, they say that the event happens in approximately a quarter of a day, so 6 hours. So it's like it comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, what if, like I'm into the cosmic impact, that there's unbelievable evidence that definitely happened. But